What up, y'all? Back again. I'm just here showing you some more structures. I wanted to talk about how the mud flood, so a lot of people don't really believe that that occurred in around 1812, so I wanted to go over that for a minute. We have what you find in the 1800s. You'll have the evidence of Easter Island being dug out, and also the pyramids of Giza was dug out. Rome was being dug out, and this is all historical photograph material and written. Kansas City was being dug out. There's several cities where they have photos of them being dug out, and then you have the structures going into the ground where you have the windows going into the ground, and I have a few in here, like that one right there. You got to look at the bottom. They sunk. Everything sunk, so you had the land and then you had aquifers or water underneath the dirt, and something that caused sound and pressure. A lot of people believe that it was a comet somehow, and I do believe in the flat earth and the firmament, so I don't know, it would have to come inside the firmament, I guess. So I believe it was when the timing of the enemy being loosed from the abyss that shook up the ground, and the ground, caused the mud flood to occur called liquefaction, and it caused the dirt to mix with the water, and it all liquefied into liquid mud, so that anything top heavy on the ground sunk. But I do believe that there was the kingdom had ended, and I believe there was some sort of rapture, because there's no real people, and I feel like you would find some sort of bones or something. But I don't know, that's my theory. And I don't believe that the creator would allow for a bunch of people to die at the end of a glorious time like that. So I believe that I don't believe there was a tribulation rapture. It doesn't even seem like it, but I do believe that there was one at the end of this kingdom end. So you have all these places like the pyramids of Giza being dug out, for instance, and Easter Island and Machu Picchu, and places were being founded in the 1800s. It seemed like everything was being founded. In fact, we call these people founders because they found the stuff. It was already here. You got stuff like this ornate stuff that I'm showing you right here, and these individuals back in this day and age didn't even have anything electronic, anything electric, no heavy equipment. There wasn't but a few people coming out of plague, supposedly, and then they had no cranes, nothing. This stuff is very ornate. We don't see it being done today for whatever reason. I know we can't do a lot of it. Some of it we can, but probably never as precise as this was done. And so you gotta kind of ask yourself, there's no snow on all these maps up until 1812. You have California was an island until 1776. So it could have been one of those 2 years is what I believe, most people believe. And all these structures going into the ground, because they got liquefied underneath them and they sunk. They're built for people larger than us. And the saints, they had to live 1,000 years, and there was a 1,000-year church age in our history. Hundreds of years added to the calendar, these glorious structures. And if you go back further, like into the early 1800s, before every city in the world burned down, we had wars, and a lot of structures have been demoed. But the ones that are still standing are pretty glorious still today. And they were built for people larger than us. They didn't have bathrooms, and they didn't have many kitchens or many bathrooms. So it makes you wonder There would be either a disconnect going on, or these millennial saints did not have to use the restroom in their glorified bodies. And I think that was the case. But there were people our size that made it over the tribulation. And so they probably would have, unless they had. Some people believe there could have been some resonance, like maybe from these organs you find in all these Catholic churches, for instance, these cathedrals, we should say. And then you have in history, 1,000-year church age, you have these 3 historians that weren't even Bible believers, but they were not they weren't into Christianity. But you have Josephus and 2 others that were famous historians in around 70 AD that all have charted in their literature, in their historical narrative, that they saw this kingdom coming through the clouds, taking over each city. And you can look it up. It's public knowledge. Just people don't look into it. And most of these structures, this is Salt Lake City, y'all, Utah. But you find this stuff in the New World as much in the New World as in the Old World. And so you have a lot of interesting pieces that are surrounding this. And then in Scripture, from Matthew to Revelation, you are told that, Christ was coming back. In that generation, that these individuals were going to be there still. And I'm going to do an episode on the Scripture, but the Scripture from Matthew to Revelation tells you that it was within 40 years, that generation, he was going to return with his kingdom. And these people, he was telling them, the people there were still going to be alive. And some of them, he told them by name they would still be there. So it wasn't like some randoms either. I think it was John. Was it John, or who was on the island of Patmos? That was Paul. But that he was still going to be alive, and he was. And these structures, we just can't build them today. But they only had a chisel and a few people. They weren't educated. When you go back into the Dark Ages, you're going to find some amazing music that was written, or amazing art and paintings, drawings, sculptures, monoliths, megaliths. These friezes and frescoes and these cathedrals painted upside down on the ceilings, hundreds of feet high. Look at that building. It's a half a story under the ground, and they kind of just retrofitted it. And that was why I put this one up here, because I wanted to give you that one's a real obvious one, but they're in every city of the world, y'all. And nobody's talking about it. Look at that. That's and their stories, look at that. They built stairs going into the ground, and then they put that door in the second floor window, you see? That was a window before, and they built steps up to it. And that's why you'll find these things. You'll find steep stairs going into the ground to a door. That's because it's sunk. That building sunk. And their floors or stories were higher than ours because they were built for more gigantic people. So they were like 14 feet stories. We have 8 to 10 from floor to ceiling. Theirs were at least 14 to 16. And they're all over. They're in the middle of nowhere. Look at the windows going into the ground there. These buildings, you can dig them out, and they go in deeper. They're not basements. Nobody builds. If you know anything about construction, you're not going to build a window going into the ground. They had to make these structures work because they couldn't dig. Look at that one. They dug out the back end of it. That one, it's sunk. This one's way sunk. They're top heavy. In most cases, you're going to find they were top heavy. And thank you.